Excuse me. I forgot to turn on my microphone. But good morning. It's good to be with you all this morning. Glad for your presence. And hopefully, the lesson that I prepared today will be something that we can meditate on and try to apply it to our lives. I can't remember exactly how long ago this was, but there was one morning that I got up to go to work, got on my truck, and this morning I had gotten up on time, and I wasn't rushing out of the house to get to work on time. I had plenty of time to get there. And so I'm just going the speed limit. I'm driving down 53. I'm heading down 53, going to turn on Research Park to go to the Redstone Arsenal. But I haven't made it there yet. I'm still on 53. And so I'm going along, and there's quite a bit of traffic out here at around 5 o'clock in the morning, about 10 after 5, something like that. Probably close to 5:30. Anyways, there was actually a lot of traffic there that morning. I was surprised how much traffic there was that early in the morning, that particular morning. And here in my rearview mirror, I see this guy. He is starting to weave in and out of traffic. He is going fast. He doesn't want to be stuck in this traffic. He's got to get somewhere on, I guess on time. Well, there was one time where he cut somebody off, and that guy had to pull off. I was like, man, this guy is crazy. And I was a little bit before. There was enough space between me and the car next to me that I just sped up just enough that I stopped with the car next to me, and I just was going to go like that. And in my mind, this guy's like this. I'm just going to teach this guy a lesson. And I was getting kind of upset at the guy for acting like that in the morning. So I decided that's what I was going to do. Well, weave back and forth like that between us, and it came where I was pretty soon going to have to get off. So I sped up and got over. Well, that guy came past me, and he jerked his way in front of me, and he slammed on his brakes. And there's a lot of traffic. I had to slam on my brakes to go over to avoid him. And there could have been a big altercation. There was no accident, but there could have been. Now, what should I have done in that situation? Should I have seen this guy driving like a maniac to provoke him to do that forward, or should I have just not let that bother me and go on? Playing games in traffic is not good. Getting upset while you're in traffic is not good. I'm sure we've all experienced some type of road rage. I do it a lot if I'm trying to get on the highway and people won't let me over. I get upset that I can't get over. But then there's sometimes where I'm in that lane and someone's coming in and I can't do anything about it. I can't let that person over, and I'm guilty of the same thing. But nonetheless, anger has a lot to do with that, doesn't it? Anger and the way that we control ourselves in certain situations like that has a lot to do with how we interact and how it affects us. When we're talking about Christianity, there's a lot of things that goes along with Christianity. There's a lot of spiritual disciplines that go along with Christianity. And one of those spiritual disciplines has to do with self-control. We look in Matthew chapter 5, the passage of Scripture that Brother Alan just read for us just a few moments ago. If you back up, he started in verse 21. If you back up just one verse, in verse 20, it says, "For I say to you, unless your righteousness that exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." So before he goes into the talking about the nature of the heart of an individual, he talks about these the Pharisees and the scribes and how they are. Unless your righteousness, he says, exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, we know what the Pharisees were, right? They were the elite. They were the spiritual leaders of the Jewish kingdom. And they thought themselves holier than thou. Very mighty people. They were very good, and they set the standard for Jewish living because they were the ones who studied the law. They were the ones who followed the law. They were the priests. And so they saw themselves as the paragons. And because of this, they got very comfortable in knowing the law and knowing the law better than the common person. And so if the common person wasn't like them, they would look down upon them. It became a show. It became a box. It became a checklist where people just, I'm going to follow this ritual and this ritual and this ritual. I'm going to dress this way, and I'm going to show everybody how good I am. And if as long as I'm doing these things, that is what it truly means to be a disciple of God. But what does Jesus say here? Unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees. So what's he talking about there? It must not be that what they were doing ended up important. It was the nature of their heart, right? Christianity is much more than just understanding the theology, understanding the do's and the don'ts. But it's a religion of the heart. Our hearts have to be transformed. And it's not a religion that's measured only by how well we comply by the rules of the religion, but our internal surrender to God. And so when we are talking about the topic of anger, it is easy to get angry. We all get angry. We all experience that emotion. But what we do with that anger is what's important. A man who is seething with anger and malice inside, but doesn't show it on the outside, even fails to meet the expectations of Jesus, because Jesus was talking about that none of this should be going on. So I want to, this morning, examine the dangers of anger and how to properly manage it. Because what anger can do, it can build. And anger can lead to hate. Anger can lead to bitterness. And those things infect your soul, infect your mind. So to the point that it can change your whole personality, to the point that nobody wants to be around somebody like that. In Ephesians chapter 4, in verse 26, it says, "Be angry and do not sin, and do not let the sun go down on your wrath." So here, the Apostle Paul is writing to the Ephesians, and he's talking about things like, yes, you're going to get angry, but get angry and sin not. How does one do that? How do you be angry and then you don't sin? Well, in the book of Psalms, Psalm 4, it says, "Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still." So the psalmist reflects what Paul was writing in Ephesians chapter 4, but goes a little bit further. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Take some time to reflect. Take some time to think. When something makes you angry, we have to take a step back. How are we going to let this affect us? Is this a situation that requires response, or this is a situation that we can find another solution? One of the hardest things can be when we get angry at each other, our friends, our family. When we get angry at each other to the point where we say things we don't mean. We lash out in ways that we wouldn't normally lash out, and we let the emotion take control. In Proverbs chapter 15, and verse 1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This soft answer that turns away wrath is more of, are you going to respond to anger with anger, or try to diffuse that situation with a soft answer, with a way of a controlled tongue? In Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 29, "He who is slow to wrath has a great understanding, but he who is impulsive exalts folly." Sometimes we're so wrapped up into the moment that we want to act on impulse when something pushes us to that point. It's really, really easy to do. Remember, there was a situation with one of my best friends from high school. When I was he was still in high school. He was a couple years younger than me, and I had just graduated. And there was a disagreement between us over a mutual acquaintance that we both liked at the time, a girl that we both liked. There was a disagreement between us. And instead of just kind of stepping back, and this is my friend, I'm not going to remove myself from that situation, I let anger and bitterness rule me in that situation. And after that whole thing was over, he and I were no longer friends. Now, he got to the point where I apologized and he forgave me, but even then, nothing was the same. He forgave me, but he also didn't want to reinstall that relationship. And I sacrificed that relationship with him just because I had that time of anger, that time of bitterness about that situation. We're all going to make mistakes like this in life. We're all going to have these times where we're vulnerable to our own selves. But that's when we have to learn from these things and try to be better and try to do things better the next time. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 24 says, "Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go." When you are angry all the time and you're bitter like that, nobody wants to be around you. Nobody wanted to be around me in that particular instance. We're not pleasant people to be around when we're acting like that. And then getting back to Galatians chapter 5. The Apostle Paul is writing towards the end of his letter to the Galatians. In the last part of Galatians chapter 5, he's talking about walking in the fruits of the Spirit. And then he talks about the works of the flesh. And in verse 19, as he's listing all of these things that are works of the flesh, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, and then he says outbursts of wrath. We can get to the point where our outbursts of wrath causes us to step out of relationship with God. Causes us to remove ourselves from fellowship with Him and fellowship in the kingdom. It can sacrifice what we have good going for us if we let it. In the passage of Scripture in Matthew chapter 5, in verse 22, it says, "But I say to you, whoever is angry with your brother without cause shall be in danger of the judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire." Now, as a kid, I never had an issue with the word Raca. That's not one was in the English language that we use today. The word Raca refers to a Hebrew term that was used to describe the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, because they were the ones that had taken them into captivity, and so they thought them as worthless. That's what it means, Raca, as worthless one. I'm not supposed to call people worthless. I remember as a kid, when I paid attention to "you fool," whoever shall say "you fool" shall be in danger of hellfire. I was really, really careful not to ever use that word, fool, or to call someone a fool. But I didn't feel bad about calling people idiots or stupid or dummy or whatever those words that go along with it. It's just not nice. That's just no way to be. It's the same words. The word foolish in some definitions says about idiot or someone who is acting like one. So in all of these passages, these are God's warnings about uncontrolled anger, where anger could lead someone. In this passage that we've been looking at, we said, well, you've heard that was said of old that you shall not murder. Well, we understand that. They understand that then. We understand now that it's bad to murder. But how does murder usually take place? Because someone got very angry with the other person, enough that they wanted to kill that person. And so Jesus is talking about, you've heard this in the prophets, but I say to you, to walk the true way of my way, that I say whoever is angry with a brother without cause is in danger of the judgment. And so he's flipping. We talked about this in John's class a few months ago. Jesus is flipping the cultural understanding of the law. Not only does the law say do not murder, but don't even do this. Don't get angry without cause, and you won't even ever be in danger of this being a part of your lives. Today in our society, for the most part, for most people, for most good people, murder is not something that we have to worry about. Well, it's not something that we think about even committing. It's viewed as an unthinkable in pleasant society. But there's still plenty of anger that goes around. Plenty of ways that we can hurt others. So how do we overcome uncontrolled anger? Well, first, we realize that our anger can hurt ourselves and hurt others. As we just looked at in Galatians chapter 5, it was listed. Outbursts of wrath and hatred is listed in those works of the flesh. We can do ourselves a great disservice and do disservice to all those around us, and we're destroying relationships. Being mean, that's not spreading the Spirit of Christ. That's not spreading the fruit of the Spirit. And so there is this growth that we have to go through. We have to grow in discipline and in self-control. James chapter 1 In verse 19, so you believe that there is one God, you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? To live foolishly, to act truly foolish, is doing things that would be, to treat Christianity, to treat our relationships, to treat ourselves in this way, is what James is talking about here. This way that we live foolishly. If we live foolishly, then we will live in the same ways that Paul wrote about in Galatians as well. What we have to see those times when we are faced with anger, when we're faced with possible losing our self-control, losing our temper. Take those moments and we try to see it as an opportunity to do good instead of replying in anger back. In 1 Peter chapter 2, in verse 23, it says, He when he was reviled, did not revile in return when he suffered. He did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. Jesus was reviled, Jesus was persecuted, Jesus was tormented. Jesus suffered through many, many things. And in that way, he never replied in the same disrespect that was shown to him. Heard a story of a preacher one time that there was some disagreement with him and another brother. Another brother wrote him up in some kind of bulletin. And that brother had said certain things about him in this bulletin. And this preacher, when he was asked about, have you read this? What are you going to do about it? His response was not to write a similar report to get back at this other brother, but he said that he was going to pray for him. Pray for his kids. Pray for his wife. Pray for their relationship. Pray for all of these the things in his life, all these things that he was critical of to this man, and pray for him. So he used this opportunity to be more like Christ instead of replying in this way. So this morning, I hope this lesson will just let us reflect. Don't allow anger to destroy your relationships here on earth. Don't allow anger to destroy your influence that you may have for Jesus. Don't allow anger to rob you of your presence with God, to rob you of your eternal security. So let's begin to continue to working out our salvation by strengthening our spiritual disciplines as we go along. It's the Christian life is not a sprint, it's a long distance run. As we talked about in VBS, it's a long race to the finish line. In this long race, we're going to have these divots that we fall into sometimes. But hopefully, if we understand beforehand, it will better equip us to handle these situations when we come across them. So I hope it's been an encouragement for you this morning. If there's anyone here that's subject to the Lord's invitation this morning, you can make those things known as we stand and as we sing.